Have you ever felt like you need to be more shiny in your business, or you need to fit yourself into a box that doesn't quite feel like you, and you worry how you're ever going to make that work when it comes to selling and delivering your offers in a sustainable way? If so, today's episode is going to be one giant permission slip to do things differently. Welcome to the Soulful Sales Show, where we talk about believing in the value of your offers, getting them in front of your right people, and selling more of what you do in your unique way. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Sales Show. Today, I am very excited to share with you an interview with someone who I had been wanting to get on the podcast for a long time. Susannah Conway, who runs a successful online course business in a way that is totally her, which she markets mainly through beautiful personal email newsletters. And honestly, I'm just so impressed with the way that she has a kind of rhythm to the way that she releases and re-releases her courses as well. So first, let me share her official bio. Susannah Conway is a writer and teacher living in London, UK, and has been sharing her heart online since 2006. Author of the creative memoir, This I Know, Notes on Unraveling the Heart, she spends her days helping people access their creative joy and to nurture a deeper, kinder relationship with themselves. Susannah is celebrating her 15-year business anniversary this year. So in this interview, we are diving into how she has made it work for herself and her brain for so long, and all alongside her ADHD as well, which she didn't know she had until 2022. This episode basically is one big example and permission slip to do it your way, to start imperfectly, and to shape your business around how you work best. I know you're going to love this one. Enjoy. You have been running your business for an incredible 15 years. So obviously we're going to get into some of the juicy details about all of that, but I think it would be really helpful to just start by sharing a little bit about your journey. In particular, I would love to hear how you figured out a way specifically to sell what you do and market what you do in a way that works for you, and actually in quite a unique way, which I think is one of your selling points in and of itself.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I've had to do it piece by piece because there wasn't really any formula that I would follow or could follow when I started. You know, this whole business has been created with quite a lot of string and sellotape because I've had to, learn as I go. I mean, like you do with anything. But I didn't have like a business out of the box, or I didn't do one of these big shiny head courses that taught me how to do it. I've just put it together and always followed my interests. If it's not fun for me to do it, then I don't want to do it. And obviously things like bookkeeping and stuff like that's not that fun, which is why I now have people that help me. But on the whole, I have followed what feels fun, interesting, and has mirrored my own personal development as these 15 years have gone by. So I started by I created an evening class. I was living near Bristol here in the UK, made an evening class. I've been blogging for a couple of years, or maybe 3 years by then. And I talked about this evening class that I was doing, and some of my online followers were like, well, I'd quite like to do that as well. But you're in the UK, I'm in America. How can I do this? And so that was the kernel of the idea for teaching online. Before that, it hadn't even been a thing. I mean, we were blogging, but we didn't want to put advertising on our blogs, ad-free blogs. It was all, it felt very different to how it feels now. We didn't have social media. I mean, I think Facebook was probably a few years old, but this was long before Instagram, let alone anything else. So I was connecting with my audience person by person through my blog, through the comments section. And it was all super organic. When I started blogging, it was just to do something creative. There was no purpose for it. I was a year into bereavement. I hadn't been working for that year, and I was piecing myself back together. And so I started writing about that on the blog. And from there, that was how I grew just a tiny little audience around me of people that were either seeing themselves in my words or on a similar kind of creative unraveling, as I called it. So when I did this evening class and wrote about it, and it was a creative class, it was about photography, but it was, infused with personal development. Of course, when I wrote about it on the blog, it was like I was marketing it, but unintentionally. And that was when people asked, could we do it as well? So a friend suggested, why don't you do it online? And it took me a few months to figure out how to do it. I knew one other person that had done something like that online. And just like I said, it just got a roll of sellotape and kind of figured it out. But it was all very kitchen table stuff. I created a password protected typepad blog where I could put the lessons, had a little Vimeo account where I could host the videos. And we had a private Flickr group so we could share photos. So, we're not talking the Kajabi days now. I had to piece it together. Like, how can I recreate a workshop or an evening class even and do it online? Like, how can I do that? So I just had to use the pieces that I already knew of, stuck it together. And those first few times I ran the course, I didn't have a mailing list. So I was putting people into my contacts on my computer. I could send out a group email. And for years and years, I had all of their email addresses, like on my computer. Then they'd import into my phone for years, because that was how, I was able to contact everyone. See, a few years later, I got my first newsletter account. But yeah, it was a simpler time. I mean, 15 years doesn't sound that long ago, but in terms of technology and social media, it feels, decades ago. And everything's sped up in those years. And, I think I just said to you that first year, I was like, this isn't going to last. This is a total fluke. And of course, by the end of the first year, I'm like, shit, I think I've made a business. Oh, so then I made a second course and then I made another one. But all of them have had a thread through them. It's always been following what I'm learning, what I want to share, what kind of joins them together. They're all about creativity in some shape or form. They're all about personal awareness, personal development. Um, and I always think you only need to be a few steps ahead to be able to come back and share what you've learned. And that's very much how my courses are. So when I teach about, I used to do photography, I did blogging, then tarot, and obviously journaling, even my business course, it's always teaching, passing back, if you like, what I know to then help, pull everyone forward with me. So yeah, and I think that's a nice way to teach. I have a really good friend who teaches qigong, and she always worried that she had to be, "Oh, I've got to be doing this for decades, and I need to be up a mountain." And I'm like, yeah, but you really don't, man, because I don't want to learn from someone like that. I want to learn it from someone like you, who I can relate to, who is much more approachable. So it's like, oh yeah, and that's kind of how I teach. It's how I seem online, how I seem in my courses and in my videos is pretty much how I am. There's definitely no smoke and mirrors. It's me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you shared the very simple, low tech way that you first did it. I think that'll be encouraging. Like, obviously, things have changed, but it is still absolutely possible to be starting out and putting your courses out like that today. Like, I see people doing that a lot. People have feelings about whether they're allowed to do it, but absolutely it works. And I also love what you said about like following my interests and coming at it from that angle, because I guess some people will, be starting their business, they'll have training in a certain area, maybe they've just done their coaching certification, whatever, and they know what they want to do, and they're picking their niche and they're doing it all in a very strategic way. And in my experience, it absolutely didn't work like that for me. I needed to just be putting my stuff out there. I needed to just be sharing this idea here and chatting to people there and putting together this course and seeing how not only it's not all about how other people react, but it's also how you feel about it. And I would also imagine, like you said, that you came into it from blogging. I was actually blogging like around at that time as well. And it was very much a like whole creative exploration for me as well. And it was a different time back then, like comments and blogs and all of this. But anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole. But where I was getting at was like, I can imagine as well, like, it's really about the relationship that you have with your readers, right? And I would say that although maybe you've upgraded your systems behind the scenes, the way you deliver your courses and all of that stuff, that relationship that you have with your readers is still going strong 15 years later, right? When it might not, it's not just like blogging now, but it's like your email newsletter or Substack or wherever it is that you show it up. Can you talk a little more about that? I would love to also hear like how you said after a couple of years you set up your email newsletter, like how did it translate from what you had been doing, and whatever you have to share about like your philosophy of keeping that relationship going.
Oh, where to start? I was going to say about the whole when people get started and they've done a course or they've found a system or they've done their coach training and someone has said you ought to do it this way. I'm a firm believer in not listening to that advice, because until you really know yourself and also know what's going to work for you, it's really difficult to try and put on the clothes of someone else's business shape, business wardrobe. I mean, I don't want to mention all of these, the big shiny hair courses I'm talking
Mhm.
about. You can do a course like that and be like, right, I've got the blueprint, I've got the codes. Oh, I hate that word, but I know how to do this because so and so has taught me, so and so's given me the template. Awesome. And then, of course, it doesn't work because that's been created for a certain sort of person or a certain level of whatever. And then when it doesn't work for you, you think, well, it's me, I'm shit, or I shouldn't be doing this. But actually, this is why business has always felt like a personal development journey. Well, for me and everyone I know, because you're learning so much more about yourself as you do this. You have to confront things like putting your face out there, and you want to do it in a way that feels comfortable for you. We don't all have the shiny hair. We don't all want to put ourselves out in that way. But while you're still following what you think is the correct formula, you can lose yourself a little bit. And that's when the online business world feels like this sort of homogenized mass of sameness. And actually, you do want to stand out a little bit, but that doesn't mean you've got to dye your hair purple and be the crazy person. You just have to find your own direction. I mean, I don't want to use tired old words like authentic because that doesn't mean anything anymore. But it is just genuinely sharing your interests, your way of doing things. And as you're figuring that out, it will start shaping what your business looks like. So when I started, like I said, I didn't know it was a business until a year in. And then I did sign up for a shiny hair course. It was actually with some blokes were running it, but they did such a convincing job with their marketing. It was all about teaching. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to do that because who am I to have a business? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not trained for this. I haven't studied this. So I signed up for this course because the marketing was arguably really good. And of course, first day I'm like, oh shit, this doesn't suit me at all. It was basically a bit like bro marketing now,
Yeah.
but done so convincingly. I was like, well, I need to take this because this is going to teach me exactly how to run this business that I've apparently made. And I never did any of it because it wasn't meant for someone like me, who we now know is super neurodivergent. But at the time, I just thought, oh, I'm a bit introverted. So it just wasn't me at all. So that was my $1,000 lesson, that you don't need to, it's not that you don't need to take a course in it, but I think you need to just pick little bits that you need. I think these big gigantic courses that are like, this is going to sort your business out, I think it's all a bit of a lie. I've learned much more from the handful of smaller courses, like someone teach me about the low ticket offer thing. And I took a few bits from that and went, oh, I can see how that could apply to what I'm doing. I
Mhm.
think that's really useful. So $1,000 lesson, check, done that. And then I had to think about, well, what do I want this to look like? And there was never a plan. But again, I kind of made the business with the sellotape and almost like Lego bricks. So I had my one big brick, and then I'm like, right, well, I've just done this course and photography was a big part of it. And some of my people are asking if I could do a photography course. I'm like, oh, yes, I can. So I made a photography course and like, well, what would that look like for me? How would I teach it? Well, how can I teach what I know? I mean, that was one thing I had studied at art college, but it was like, how can I translate what I know now into something online? So I figured that out. I did a blogging course, but there's always been this kind of thread between all the things. And I've always paid close attention to what I want to do, what I'm obsessed with right now, but also what people are asking me about. So my inbox is telling me what people are interested in. You know, I'm always listening, I'm always noticing, I'm always in my little Facebook groups listening to what people are curious about, you know, like with my tarot course. Well, where are they struggling with pieces? Where could I either add that to a course or make a little workshop out of it? So you kind of get that organic information that comes to you, because the number one thing you've got to do is listen to your students. Otherwise, you're a shit teacher. You've got to listen to them. So, what was the question? Where am I going with this? Give me a clue.
I mean, I love where you took it, firstly, but I guess it was about like how you've been saying about this relationship you have with your students and how they feed back to you
Yes.
the ideas. And it's your whole marketing strategy, whether it's the email, the blog, whatever, is really about relationships, right?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the word I needed, relationships. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are people I know for a fact who are still on my mailing list, still in my community, that were there from the very beginning. I have a ton of people that mention unraveling to me all the time. That was the name of my first course. And, you know, Unravelers Unite, they're still there and they're still with me. And they've been growing with me and aging with me, if you like. So yeah, the first course came about because people asked for it. Um, and so it is good practice to kind of work on building up a little bit of an audience before you put something out there. Don't build a course and then go, oh, no one wants it. If there's no one there to offer it to, you've got to do it the other way around. So I created the little course. I had 100 people sign up in the first week. I mean, fuck, I would kill for that now to have that happen so quickly. But it's because there weren't any other courses. It was such a new thing. And people talked about it on Flickr because that was all we had. So through that first course, the people that were taking it, I gave them a little JPEG to put on their sidebar on their blog. So people got to see that because we actually looked at blogs back in the day. So there was a lot of word of mouth growth that happened, first of all. And a lot of sharing, a lot of recommendations, like people would tell their friends. So that started happening. And then I started building the relationships because I've always consistently blogged, not so much in the last years because we've had social media kind of take over from that. But when I did start my newsletter, I think that's when things started speeding up a little bit. It was probably, I mean, if I'd have thought, I'd have checked the date when I first sent out a newsletter because I've kept all of them in my inbox in a folder. It was probably in the first year. It must have been in the first year, first 18 months. I joined, I want to say it was Constant Contact. I can't remember. Anyway, crappy old newsletter provider. And my first little sign up box was on my sidebar on the homepage of my blog. And it just said, join my newsletter. Like there was no freebie because I just kind of did it half heartedly. Oh, newsletters, how slimy. Now it's my favorite thing. So a few people, you know, signed up, and it was quite literal that I just sent out information going, "Hey, going to be doing an enrollment on Thursday at this time." I had to tell them the time I was doing it because there were limited places because I couldn't hold space for more than about 150 people in a Flickr group. So I'd give them the time, and people would sign up, and then I'd get emails of complaint that people couldn't get a spot. It's a whole other world back then. So those would be the newsletters I sent, literal news that went out, giving them the information they need. And it was probably about a year before I started being a little bit more chatty. I think it's because I was chatty on the blog. So the newsletter felt like an extra piece of that. What was the purpose of it? Things have now shifted to where most of my chatty personal sharing goes in I call them love letters. I send out these letters and I waffle on about myself. And then I tell them about the new thing I'm creating or offering or that's enrolling. I give them scholarship opportunities. I give them discount codes. I've made it very clear that that's where you get those things. If you sign up to my list, That's where you get the link for the scholarships if you need it. That's where you get the discount codes. I don't share them anywhere else. And so that helps me have a clear line between that and, say, Substack, which I've dabbled in. I haven't quite found my flow there. It was a little shiny bell that I haven't quite found how I want to use it. So the newsletter is the sacred place. And I don't have a set day that I send them. It's roughly twice a month. It usually when enrollment opens and then when it closes. Sometimes there'll be one sent out in the middle of the enrollment period, depending how long it is. But I'm just always really personal in them. You know, when my cats had cancer, I'm sharing about it. When anything's happening, I've talked about dating woes when I was foolishly bothering to still do that. You know, it's just it's like an update. It's a friendly update. And I consistently I get a ton of replies. A lot of people see them as letters from, I'm everyone's pen pal, basically. And I love it because I could tell you off the top of my head 20 or 30 people that always reply or who I know are there, who've been in my community for a long time. I see the same names always taking my courses. And it is a community, and it feels a bit one-sided when it's just me sending out a newsletter. But we're on chats and DMs in Instagram, or, I know these people. I mean, so many of them have given donations to cat charities after my cat died. They didn't even tell me about it. Nita, my VA, said that she'd gotten notifications about it. I'm like, oh my God, and I didn't ask for that. I didn't, but people just did this kind thing as a way to, do something like you would for a friend. So, and I think because if anyone messages me on Instagram, and I can't say I do it every time, but usually if someone has a question, I'll just do a voice note back, and I think it's things like that where I am an actual real person. I mean, clearly there's no shiny hair, but there isn't, 15 people in front of me blocking your way to have access to me. I mean, sometimes that's overwhelming. I do have all my replies to my newsletter first go to Nita, because I mean, as we've said, I have ADHD, and now I understand why I'm so shit at doing email. But it just overwhelms me. Your email will come in, I'll read it, and I'll be like, oh, that's lovely. Then I will totally forget you exist, until the next email. I can't, I lose track of it all. So all the replies go to Nita. If there's something she can help with, she will respond. And if it's something definitely for me, she'll go, Suze, look at this, make sure you reply. She keeps me accountable, and that's perfect. So, but where I'm going with this is, I am a real person. I mean, I'm probably too real in some ways, but my business is about personal growth, and I lead by example. I report back. And that has always been how I do things, and I always will until I'm pushing up the daisies. So yeah, it's a touchy-feely business. I couldn't do it any other way. I can't pretend to do the shiny hair. Look how perfect I am, everyone. I can't do it. If shit is happening, I will tell my people. And that's actually been such a gift so many times over the years.
Yeah, and clearly people resonate with it. I'm glad you shared about like how you practically manage it with your assistant, because I was thinking like, I'll just be really honest with you. Like sometimes I find it overwhelming, thinking of growing my audience and the level of visibility that I want to have. That's one of the things I butt up against, like, oh, but I can't handle like replying to the messages, or it's too much for me and all of that. And I think,
do you have a VA? Do you have someone
yeah,
helping with that?
Yeah.
That's the essential piece. I mean, I only have Nita. I mean, I've got a bookkeeper and an accountant, but I don't talk to them every day. Nita works for me part-time, or as and when, but it's sort of turning into part-time. I could grow in theory, but I don't want to. I don't want someone full-time. I don't want the responsibility that comes with that, which is I need to bring in a certain amount every month to make sure everyone gets paid. I like having my business the size it is. It's enough. I make very healthy six figures. I've got 34,000 people on my mailing list. That's kind of like this, and those are the only two numbers I know. That's kind of the size where I'm like, okay, that's keeping it all ticking along. And it gives me a little bit of space in there to know that even if my open rate's like 50%, 60%, I'm still hitting enough people to be able to maintain my courses and my, the money that comes in to pay my extraordinary London rent. But yes, it was a bit of it was a good decision to get all replies to go to Nita first, because Nita's very neurotypical and she is super efficient and brilliant. She's lovely on email. She's just, I mean, me too, but I will forget to reply. Whereas Nita won't. Like, this is part of her job, and she will do it in a timely way. She will, poke me when I'm not replying or when I'm forgetting things. She keeps me accountable. When I redid my website last year, which I might add, I did on a whim over 2 weeks myself. On my contact page now, it gives you Nita's email, just the hello email. And it says, look, I've got ADHD. I'm shit at email. Nita will get back to you, or she will forward your message to me. And that's just setting that lovely expectation of, guys, I might forget. There are so many emails I never reply to, and I feel shit about it every time. That feeling never goes away. But I forget, I never ring my mum, so it's not personal.
I love how honest and real you are. And you know what? When you said about like, I've got it on my website, I'm upfront about it. That's the whole point, isn't it? Like you're upfront about who you are in
Just be
general.
clear. Like I
So,
said, no smoke
yeah,
and mirrors, no magical expectation that it's, Conway ink and you're going to get us. No, I mean, I will do my absolute best. I have standards. I'm now putting all my courses on Kajabi because I just happen to like how it looks. But before that, I mean, I only started doing that in 2020. Before that, all my courses were on email, basically. I sent out all the lessons on email. So there wasn't even like a centralized site where you could look at the lessons, look at the stuff. And that worked perfectly. My God, my overheads were nothing.
yeah,
Kajabi, by contrast, is really fucking expensive, more than I think it should be. But I've thrown all my eggs in that basket now. I like how it looks. I've got a semi-customized, setup, and it just works. And I'm actually really enjoying having all my courses in one place. Like, I like looking at my little library, like your thing,
yeah,
which
yeah.
what are you using? Teachable or
I'm on Thrivecart.
Thrivecart? Yeah, just having them all together. I was like, oh, it's such a pleasurable thing. And I've had people say, oh yeah, no, I like going into my Susannah library and
Yeah.
checking in that way. So it's so much easier to update things. What we used to do is send out all lessons in daily emails, and then at the end you'd get a PDF of the whole course. Oh my God, having to update the fucking PDF was a nightmare. And I was always trying to make sure every time we ran a course, it's up to date, check on the links. Nightmare. Now it's all in Kajabi, easy to update, easy to check things on the resources page, like however it is. I have it all laid out how I want it. I know I'm very controlling, but I think that's part of the ADHD. I will go down that rabbit hole. I don't want anyone else to, oh, no, I will lay it out. I will set it up. I'm going to do the words. All of the copy is mine. This is my baby and it will always be my baby. I don't want to, I remember some shiny haired, lovely biz person who I think is okay. But I remember her saying you want to get to a point where you outsource your own job. So you just sort of move yourself out of the business because you hire someone to do what you do. And I'm like, well, what do you do then? What do I have to do? Have loads of fucking meetings all the time? Oh my God. I want to do the fun bit. I'm sitting here coming up with ideas because that's how my brain works. And luckily, I have got sort of systems to make sure I get things done. Most of the time, I'm just scrabbling. I come up with too many ideas. There's no shortage of those. But the reason I'm able to get things done and have consistently done that for 15 years is because I have the accountability of opening enrollments. Like if I say, well, we're
Yeah.
doing this, then we're doing it. But I open an enrollment when we start, say it's a 6-week course. The first week will be done and I'll be sort of halfway into the second week of creating it. But then I will create as we go because I want to be able to use feedback from how people are enjoying it or struggling with it or whatever's coming up. And also, it's a foolish thing to have the whole thing created and then expect people to join. You've got to be limber. You have to adapt and change it and shape it as you go. And also, creating a 6-week course is really, really tiring and exhausting. So when you've got that adrenaline hit of that first session, that's when you want to be making it. So have it all prepped, know what you're doing, But then, I mean, obviously I completely burn out when I do that, but that's how I create things.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah,
it's the only way I can do it. I certainly couldn't make a 6-week course and then launch it. I don't have enough accountability, or I need a really juicy carrot dangling to make me do it. I've done a couple of workshops, which I did find quite hard just because I was like, oh God, I've got to get this all finished. And then everyone gets the whole thing. Oh, that's not as much fun. But I do see the benefit of workshops, and I've had an idea for a new one I want to do this year. I think the way things are at the moment, I had my most financially abundant year ever in 2020. I think a lot of online people did because we had a captive audience. I mean, that was lovely. 2021 also was good, and then 22 and 23 have been a bit less because I can feel that we're all like, well, I don't really want to spend any money now. Actually, what the fuck's happening with the world? I can feel that. I feel that around me as well as in my business. So there are fluctuations, and actually, I'm feeling that we still have the shiny head courses, sure, when they have audiences big enough to sustain that. But with the sort of size of mine, I want to bring in some lower price things just because I don't know if we all have the bandwidth for a 6-week course anymore. I think a 2-week course might be nice. I think a 2-hour thing. I think mixing up the times is good, and also mixing up the price points. So that's where I'm heading at the moment, having a mixture.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, what you said about that accountability for yourself, creating the course as you're delivering it, I absolutely need that too. I cannot motivate myself unless I'm doing it in that kind of way. And I have my ways, as I'm sure you do, of like getting a little bit ahead of myself by making myself accountable to my VA, for example, because she has to do something for me in relation to it. But yeah, but what you said about like mixing it up, I feel like that helps with the accountability for our students as well. I've recently experimented with a few really short, focused periods of like getting a really specific thing done, and I'm very much inspired by Elizabeth Goddard, and it's just worked so like I've been blown away. And it's also made me realize how much I'm overcomplicating or potentially like working harder than I need to by doing like showing up live week after week after week. It doesn't need to be that way.
Exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I actually want to talk a little bit about your kind of sales rhythm because I know you say you're mixing things up a bit, but I've always been so impressed that you can just go on your website and you can go to like your courses tab and you're like, I'm opening enrollments for this one in March. I'm opening enrollments for that one in June. And it's just like, I'm just how does that work with your neurodivergent brain? Because that is like, that's some like forward thinking, that's some forward planning going on there.
Well, you'd think it was, but no, not really. So I had my first course, and then I ran it. In the end, I ran Unraveling 18 times. Can you even believe? 18 times. That was definitely my best-selling, most popular, most impactful course. And that was also, I'd argue, my least accomplished course. You look at my stuff now, I'm like, fuck, that was a tiny baby in courses land, but it had so much heart. And I think it was impactful because I left space for the participants to have their own experience. They weren't just learning something, they were doing something. So I kept running that course, and then I started creating other ones. And then I got to a point where I was running a course every couple of months, and I just rotate through the courses I have. So I'm always rerunning them. And each time, you're tweaking little improvements, a little bit of updating. And then it got to a point when I moved back to London, and this was probably just under 10 years ago, my rent went up from where I'd been living. So it was a very practical consideration. I was like, I need monthly income. I can't just do quarterly. I need this to be more regular. So I got in the rhythm of launching, well, launch is not the right word, opening enrollments every month on something, because I needed that monthly money coming in. And so that's what I do now. And luckily, my enrollments are usually big enough to tide me over 2 months if I have to. But I try and do it monthly. I do really have a disgusting rent, and I desperately, desperately want to move out of London. So at the moment, that does drive a lot of what I do. And I resent that quite a lot, actually. I just want it to be easier. But I know we're doing this on audio, but I can show you how, and maybe I'll send a picture So you can put it underneath the audio thing. I'll just show you on Zoom. This is in my business notebook. Actually, no, this is my junk drawer journal, I call it. Again, I'll send you a picture, literally called the junk drawer. And in here, this is where I plan everything out. I mean, I'm a huge, huge journaler. Some of your audience might know that. So I get my pens out, I get my fountain pens, I get stickers, I draw a grid of January to December, and I use tiny post-it notes to plan out, right, when am I going to do things? I need to do it in a visual way like this, because if I do it in my Google Calendar, it's not the same. I
Yeah.
need to be able to move the sticky note. I need it to be three-dimensional. And I do this for everything. When I was having my ADHD assessment, the psychiatrist, this was on Zoom, and he was like, so Miss Conway, how do you stay on top of things and plan? And I'm like, let me show you my 4 notebooks and my Hobonichi that I use to figure it all out. And let me show you my post-it note system. He was like, oh, yes, you are very neurodivergent. I'm like, yeah, because I need to see it. I need it to be colorful. I need it to be fun. And I need to be able to, I've done this grid like 4 times because no, I'm not really happy with how that looks. So I'm just going to do it again because I can spend half a day doing that and feel really productive. And actually, I've achieved nothing. But this is how I plan it out. So I know in April, I'm running the Sacred Alone. I'm revamping that course. I've run it, I created it 10 years ago. And I got the thought at the end of last year going, oh, I'd like to do that again. I'd like to, yeah. So that's what I'm doing next. Then I'm going to do a free biz thing because I want to run the Inside Story, which is my business course in June. And then I'm like, well, I might do Journey Your Life again because I did that in January. Well, maybe if I do that twice a year, that could be January and July. Yeah, cool. That feels good. And that's how I do it. So there's no strategy. It is just a case of where does it go on the grid? And that's loose, and I will change that as and when I want to, as and when I want to. I also have some post-its here for some of the workshops I'm thinking about. I've got a big, juicy, delicious, beautiful course that I want to do, but it hasn't felt like the right time. I was prepping for it in December, but that's when my cat got really ill. And in the last couple of months have just been really hard. So I haven't had that kind of juicy creative energy. I've needed to go to ground a little bit and just be with my grief and my sadness. And that's what I've been doing. And now we're coming into spring. I don't feel up to creating a whole new course, which was, again, my intention. But what I'm going to do is by rerunning the Sacred Alone, I'm moving it from, it started off as daily emails in 2014. Then it evolved into just an ebook offering for a little while. And now it's going to be on Kajabi. I'm re-recording all the meditations. I'm zhuzhing up all of the lessons. I'm creating a whole new module about sacred grief. I'm just making it a much more, what's the word, luscious thing. And it started from there, but I've got 10 years sort of stuff that I've learned that I want to bring to it. And actually updating courses, I really enjoy doing that. I've done that with so many. I did it with my tarot course, my business course, my journaling course. Actually, yeah, pretty much all of them. I've just recreated them, remade them. The tarot course used to just be emails and a PDF. Now it's these fuck off amazing videos, if I do say so myself. I've just enriched it. It's like when you feed some plant food to your potted plant and suddenly it's just the leaves are more luscious. That's what I like to do with my courses. So that feels redoing the Sacred Alone feels juicy. But creating something from scratch, I'm not there yet. And the way my business works, I'm able to go with the seasons of my energy, and that's, oh my God, I'd be screwed. If I had a 9 to 5 job, I'd be screwed because and the older I get, I mean, I'm 51 now. I'd like to say I'm at the tail end of perimenopause. No, I got my period yesterday. So no, I'm still in this big sort of tumultuous change that's going on within me. And to have a job, it's not a job, a calling that means if I sleep like shit, I don't have to work that day. I work 7 days a week, but by that I mean I just do bits and pieces when I need to. I might work manically for a whole month and then I'll have a few weeks where I don't do very much at all. I don't have a structure to my day because I don't have to. I don't have kids, so I don't have to have a structured day. which is my choice. That's what I prefer. Not having kids, that wasn't a choice, but that's just the way life's gone. So I make the most of it by creating my surroundings in the shape that I need them, which it turns out supports my neurodivergence, which I learnt about at the end of 2022. Who knew?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, so basically, to summarize what I'm taking away from this, firstly, you
All
can
the
look on
work.
your website and you can see this like, oh, this is opening this. There's so much room for, there's so much flexibility within that. And actually thinking of it now on your website, usually it's like, it's opening in a month, not even a specific date listed of the month.
Yes.
I can
Yes.
totally see how it's a lot more flexible behind the scenes. I can confirm your journal looks really fun and pretty as well, having seen it. I love that insight into the process. Yeah, it's not, it's a rhythm that works for you. It's a rhythm that there's lots of space for flexibility. Also, relaunching the courses again and again. I love that you shared that. And actually, that in itself, I certainly find when I relaunch my stuff, that is what motivates me to go into it and upgrade it just the way that you were talking about. If I never put it out there again, like I'll just like forget about it. It's kind of like the emails we were talking about earlier. So yeah, I love that rhythm and finding space for yourself and the way that whatever's going on in your life and the way that your brain works as well, which I feel like I could dig into so much more. But we've already been talking for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, here
I'm
for
gonna
it.
ask you four quickfire questions, and then
Done.
there will be a bonus episode with a bonus question as well. Okay, so the first question is, beyond financial success, what impact do you want to have in the world through your work?
Oh, blimey. Um, well, my little unofficial strapline I had for years was that I wanted to help people heal their hurt so they didn't pass it on.
Mm.
And I think that's still what I'm doing. I haven't had kids. I can't create beautiful new humans to go out into the world and hopefully make a difference. I mean, that's a big ask. I've got nephews that I wish for that for. But what I can do is I can support the mums and the parents and the grandparents and the people who are raising those kids. And I know that how I healed through my bereavement in 2005 and onwards, I sorted out so much of my tangled shit from the past. And that was how I was able to get to a point where I'm able to teach now. And, I didn't know I was going to be a teacher. That would never have occurred to me. And yet I started writing a diary when I was 11 and I've never stopped. That's 40 years of self reflection. So I think when I look back on all the things I've done and what got me to here, it's always been about figuring my shit out and then passing on what I learn. So that's what my business helps me do. That's my vehicle.
I love that. Second question is, if you could give a message of encouragement to past you earlier on in your business, what would that message be?
Oh, don't waste your $1,000. You don't need it, mate. But I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have heard that. That sounds great. It's lovely 15 years in to go, oh, you did need. Actually, I think I needed the lesson. And it would have been lovely for me to have heard, just trust yourself, do what works for you and ignore what everyone else is doing. But you only learn that by moving through it. I see people when they've taken a shiny haired course in particular, and you then see their websites and they all look like the shiny haired
Yeah,
person's
yeah,
website. And it's like, and they all trot out, same old, life and business you love. Brilliant. Guys, do something different, do something else, or just do something that actually feels like you. But I think you have to go through that first incarnation of emulating what you think is successful and doing what someone else is doing, and then go, why isn't it working for me? And then you move through that and go, oh, actually, well, fuck that. I'm going to do what I actually want to do. But I think you have to move through that. And I didn't do the emulating, but I sure as shit was looking at what other people were doing because I didn't have the confidence to think, I mean, having a business, what?
yeah.
The sort of person that does that. But now I have, but I didn't know that business could look like however I want it to. I was still living in this world where I'm like, well, I have to be able to do this and I have to do that. I don't know how my accounts work. I can't bookkeep to save my life. I barely know what I'm doing. So I will just do what feels good to me. And I'm going to send out, and I've never thought about the headlines on my newsletters. I don't give a shit about that. I'll look at what I've written and go, oh, yeah, so it's kind of like that. I mean, I do have the benefit of having trained as a journalist. I have a degree in journalism. There was some training back in the day, but dudes, I was in my 20s. That's like 15 lifetimes ago. So what I'm doing now is more conversational. I think that's probably the greatest secret is make it conversational. Don't try and sound like a robot. Please don't rely on AI to write your things. You know, be a human who's going to screw up and mess up, but be personable with it. That's so much more engaging. That's why people get my newsletters and I'm basically their pen pal in London because I write like a normal person. As soon as we get into the whole, super shiny copywritten jazz, yeah, but everyone else is doing that as well. So no one stands out. You don't sound professional. You just get lost in this sea of sameness. And it's so fucking boring to see that sameness. I have a secret inbox where I sign up to all the newsletters basically. If I don't want them in my main inbox. And when all these newsletters come in, I'm like, oh my God, I can't distinguish who's coming in sometimes. I'm like, doesn't so and so use that as a strap line? Doesn't so and so put it like that? If I hear a business and life you love one more time, I'm going to poke my eyes out because it's like there are more words in the English language. Like try and jazz it up, or just don't say anything and try something else. It's not that you have to be the most original, but it just has to not just do it your way, even if it's you saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Like that will get you so many more replies to an email if you share from the heart and go, I have no idea what I'm doing. My kid's sick. This is happening. I'm at a loss. Everyone will be able to relate to you. It is the relatable thing, which I think is also probably an overused word, but be real. Be real. We're not robots. Every time I buy from someone, I look at their about page. If I buy something on Etsy, I'm stalking their website. I want to know who this person is. Just recently read a novel. I stalked the crap out of that author. I'm now following her on Instagram. I've bought her second book because it's all about creativity. Like we want to know. It's a bit like the Liz Gilbert factor. We all love her because she wrote a book about, having a little breakdown and then she went off on a bit of a mission. But that's why we loved her because she showed us the sort of the shit stuff as well as the good stuff, and obviously wrapped up in a nicely written book. But still, she comes across as very personable, and I think that gives you that cozy, yummy feeling. And I think I like that, and I will always share in a way that I like because I can't do it any other way. Basically, I mean, I can't hide myself. If only.
I love it. It's so important. Um, Question number three, what's one achievement in your business journey that you want to celebrate right now?
Oh, achievement. Oh, that's a big word. Um, just the fact that I'm still here, I think is plenty. I mean, I had a book published properly. I've had a couple, but that was years ago. That felt a lot easier back then. I mean, I had a little blog and someone wanted to publish a book I'd written. What? That's so much harder now. Um, but no, that doesn't feel like the biggest achievement. I think that I'm still here, and that I'm able to fluff around in the way that I do, that I'm able to have people's trust, which is something I've never taken for granted, that I could write to anyone in my audience and they'd write back to me, that I could leave them a DM and they're like pals. I think that's lovely. I do feel very supported in my business, emotionally as well as financially, and that's a gift. Yeah, and that I have their trust, that's I just yeah, that's such a lovely thing. That is such a lovely thing. And actually makes me quite teary because it's not just a business. This is me sharing my stuff, and yeah, I don't take it for granted. So,
I mean, what
yeah.
an achievement. That is absolutely worth celebrating. And finally, what does soulful selling mean to you?
My God, I think I've just talked about that for the last
Yeah.
55 minutes. I think I've covered that one. Um, just be, just don't try and be something you're not. Anything I say is going to sound so trite and so obvious and actually quite unhelpful. I don't want to do a sound bitey thing. Soulful selling is just being really, really truthful, but that also gets used and manipulated. Or, the honestly, or speaking honestly, but some of the copywriting tricks I see, I just want to punch people. Um, it's just really, truly showing behind the curtain. And Ruth, I don't even know how to put it into words. I think it's everything I've just said.
Exactly. You said it.
I don't know how to sum it up. I can't.
You're doing it. You're being it.
Um,
You're an example
how
of
I
it.
am with you right now is how I am in all things,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And actually, it definitely helps. Having 15 years in business sounds great, but being 51 in business helps. When I started, I was in my early 30s. And I mean, like I told you, going through a bereavement, putting myself back together. I wasn't even finding myself, recreating, rebuilding, unraveling all of my shit. And obviously that's a lifetime's work, but did a lot of it back then. And through these 15 years, I've been getting a lot more tired. That's what aging feels like for me. But I trust myself more. I know myself. I know my good stuff and my bad stuff, and I'm okay with all of it. Yeah, aging, you don't look as great as you used to, but who fucking cares? I feel in my power. Again, such a cliched thing to say, but it's true. I feel unstoppable. Doesn't mean I want to do loads of things. It just means that I trust myself completely. And that also is partly 15 years in business. And now I've got to a point where I'm like, well, I'm just going to do it my way. But also personally, like I feel so much more confident. I like myself, down with the patriarchy. Hell yeah. But yeah, I do. I really do truly feel there's a completeness that I really like, and that feeds into my business. I feel more confident with it.
Thank you for just showing up, being real, and giving us a look behind the scenes. And I hope that, well, I know that it will inspire so many people listening to just, allow their messy ways, because that's the only way they can do it anyway. But just let's accept that. So thank you so much. That was
You are
amazing.
so welcome.
And if you want to find out more about Susannah and her wonderful work, you can go to her website at susannahconway.com, download her free workbooks at susannahconway.com/unravel, or follow her on Instagram at Susannah Conway, or her Substack at The Unraveled Heart. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Soulful Sales. If you have a moment to rate and review, know that it really does make a difference. And if you'd like to carry on the conversation, then you can connect with me on Instagram at Ruth Poundwhite, sign up to my newsletter at ruthpoundwhite.com/newsletter, or my personal favourite, join me inside the low ticket membership at ruthpoundwhite.com/membership. And keep doing what you're doing, because your work really does matter.